Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Brass Pass's new series, Life Story. This series will shed a spotlight on some of the most influential and charismatic people in our wonderful brass band world today. Our first guest on the show really needs no introduction at all. However, it is beholden on me to really give him the best introduction we can. Quite simply put, this man is the most charismatic, flamboyant and widely recognised man in banding today. He's a brilliant player, a superb conductor, a wonderful compere, and I'm happy to call him a great friend. Not only that, he kept the cravat industry in the 1970s and the 1980s alive single-handedly. It could only be one person. So please welcome to the very first episode of Life Stories, the one and only Richard Evans. Richard, welcome to the show.
Wow, Martin, that was wonderful. I didn't wonder who you were talking about at first.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for your introduction.
Absolute pleasure. It's great to have you over here. This series is called Life Stories.
Wow.
Not only have you led a magnificent life, you're still leading it. Can we relay to our listeners how young you are?
Well, yes. In October this year, I will be 84.
Fantastic.
So.
And still going strong?
Yes.
Still going strong?
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
We're here today in Leyland, quite fittingly. This has been a time which is synonymous with you. You have grown up with Leyland and you're inseparable over here. And we're going to talk a lot about Leyland later in the show. But let's start right at the very beginning. You were born in Aldershot, a southerner no less. So we'll come back to that one as well. You were the son of a regular soldier?
I was, yes.
Okay. Tell us about what your early life was like and what the introduction to music was.
Very, very interesting, although when I was so young I didn't remember, or don't remember much of it. My father was, when we were, it's about 1936, my father was sent abroad to India. He was in the King's Liverpool Regiment. And of course he took me with him and Mum and my sister, who's 2 years older than me, and we went off to India. And my mother didn't enjoy the temperature over there, so after 2 years we were sent back home, and my dad obviously was still there. We came home and we went to live in Plymouth because a lot of Mum's family lived in Plymouth.
Okay.
And then sadly along came the war, so that put paid to my father coming home for a long time.
Sure.
And I never saw my father from being 3 till I was 10.
Really?
Yes, so it was 1944. He came home because he was being discharged as medically unfit. He had arthritis and emphysema.
Oh dear.
I think that's had something to do with smoking about 40 caps in full strength a day.
It might well have.
I think so. And he came home, and because he was looking for a job, and he finished up in Leyland because, again, Mother had some friends up here, and of course my father was from Liverpool, and we came to live not far down the road in Preston, near Pemberton. Pemberton was near Preston.
Of course, yes.
And he got a job here, down about 2 miles down the road at Leyland Golf Club, as actually he was the groundsman, and also he had to look after everything else. He wasn't just the groundsman.
Now, I read in your book that those days when you came up from Plymouth into Preston, the hours that your mother and father had to work were just quite ridiculous.
Yes.
From sunrise through to sunset, working on the golf course, your mum was stewardess and doing all the cooking, and then of course working long into the evening as well. That must have been quite a hard childhood.
Well, it was, but we don't forget I hadn't seen my father for
of course, yes.
7 years. So, and he was very, very industrious, I once got on the course and I tried, because I remember he had a mower with no power on it, and it was a 12-bladed mower, and he used that on the greens. And I tried to push it one day, and I couldn't even move it. So it was a very, very physically hard job he did.
Sure.
But remember, we'd got a house with it. We hadn't got a house, you see. So we had this house. It's still there, and it's actually now a nursery. But for having a house, and the wages were £7 a week for both of them. That
Incredible.
But we got by, and at that time I was actually at Bolsheviks Grammar School. I moved to Bolsheviks Grammar School. How I got there, I don't know. I wasn't very...
You passed your 11 plus,
Yes.
as it was in those days.
Yes, yes.
And your head principal, Lady Mrs. Cargill?
No, I don't remember her name very well. Miss Gornell.
Gordon, not Cargill. Yes.
Close.
Yeah. Thought it was a mistake.
Well, she was reading the names out and said, this person's passed, this person's passed. Now this one, I don't know how this one's passed. So it didn't give me great confidence, and I didn't carry it through. I wasn't very good at the school.
So what was your introduction to music?
Well, that was when my father, being an ex-serviceman, he was a member of well, it wasn't the Royal British Legion at that time, but it was the Leyland British Legion. And he went down once a week for his evening out and a few pints. And up on the wall, and there was a poster saying, any member's sons wishing to join or to learn a brass instrument, come on a Tuesday, because we're looking for new players for Leyland British Legion Brass Band.
Any son,
He
member's
didn't mention
sons.
anything about ladies.
And what year was this?
This would be 44.
Okay, so still in
45,
unenlightened times.
Yeah, it was 11, 45 it would be. So, so I went down there eagerly. My father came back and said, would you like to join a band and a brass instrument? Oh, yes, Dad. And I think my father thought I'd do a 9-day wonder. Gave me my shirt and I pedalled down to the club, and there was 30 other boys there, and I thought, this is going to be hard work, but at least we'll be playing God Save the King at the end of the day. Well, we didn't. This Jock Finley, the man was called, Jock Finley, who did the job, he put an easel out and a blackboard, drew 5 lines, and well, we thought they were tadpoles, but of course there were notes. And it was a scale. Gave us a manuscript, and we had to write it out. So we were a bit miffed about that, because we thought we'd been cheated. The next week we went with Michelle, 15 there, and the week after that maybe 10, and it was going down all the time. And maybe 5-6 weeks we arrived there, and there was only 6 of us. And Mr. Finley came, counted us, and he said, right, we can have the instruments, because he only had 6 spare instruments.
This was his secret all along.
Well, I thought this, yes. Everybody was sorting the wheat out from the chaff.
Yes, yes.
And I thought that was the wisdom of Solomon. I thought,
absolutely.
how clever. And he produced this cornet, well, I think it had the shape of a cornet, because they weren't very good, the instruments.
And this man was Scottish as well?
Scottish.
Okay.
So my piece went in. And he said, right, he taught us how to play, well, the old business. At one time, they were putting little bits of paper on that, which, of course, is the worst thing you could ever do. Right? So, but we were producing notes on it. So I went home, and my father said, play it, because he was very strict, because he'd been a company sergeant major, you see, so play that. And it sounded a little bit like a sick camel. And he said, you're not playing that instrument in the house. And he made me practice outside.
So you were banished to the bunker?
Banished to the bunker.
On the
Oh,
nice
you saw me,
green.
did you?
Yes. Yeah. Did you ever get hit?
No.
You were okay.
I wasn't allowed to practice while they were playing.
Ah, well that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Yeah. But come wind, come rain, come shine,
Well,
young Richard Evans is out with his cornet, sitting on a bunker, learning your
I
craft.
think I made it rain a few times. But then it was beginning to come winter time, and it was a bit cold, and I asked my father, would he re-audition me? He said, yes, all right. And I played again, and it must have been a little bit better. He said, go on then, you can practice inside now. And
That's progress.
well, it is.
That is progress.
It took a while before I got into the band, and I was like second, third cornet.
So tell us about your first band.
Leyland British Legion. They met every Sunday afternoon, that's all, because they closed the club in the afternoon, and we practiced. And there was our bass drummer was called Eli, and I can't remember his second name. And he was a fabulous drummer on the march, because he never did concerts. He was a little tiny drum, and he used to throw his sticks about, spin the drum. Wonderful he was. Really great guy. And he used to say, my friend was called Len Birchall. We sat together on third corner, and he sat behind us, and he had a stick with him. And every time we played something wrong, he hit. He just went right on the right ear. And we always wondered, because he couldn't read music, but he knew when we were playing wrong. And
can you imagine that approach these days?
and I used to get home on Sunday tea time with a big red ear.
Yeah.
And my father said, "What's that?" So, but we progressed, and I had a lot of help, and I wanted to be on the front row. You see, we all want to play tunes, and eventually got to flute. And it was Harry Barlow was the man from Irwell Springs Band, which was a very famous band.
Yeah.
He was conducting, and we were going to a contest at Bellevue Spring Festival, and we were like in the fourth section, and there were 42 bands wanted to be in this.
42 in one section.
So what they did, the powers that be, they sliced it into 21 bands in each. So, and we played Proud of the Fire. I could actually sing. Pa, 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 pa. I remember it even now. And I was playing flute, and we played in the Big King. No, we played not in the Big King's Hall. The results came out in the King's Hall, and five of us youngsters, young lads, we learnt together. We were listening. The result came out, and we won.
Incredible.
We leapt up,
incredible,
and everybody looked at us. Yeah.
Well, something we have in common, because my very first contest back in Bolton Borough days on Indian Summer, the Free Trade Hall, we won. I thought this contesting game is easy. What's the difficult bit? Why is everybody getting stressed about this? And the next 10, but we came nowhere. So yeah, such is contesting, and such is life.
So that got me going. And my father he realised that at least it wasn't a 9-day wonder. And he was supportive, and he said, "Well, what I think." Round about that time, Leyland Motors Band had just started. I think they started in 47.
Yes.
They started in 47, Leyland Motors Band. And they brought Harold Moss, the great Harold Moss, from Creswell Colliery to take the band. This was about 1949 he came. And it was a works band. Well, it sounds like a works band, Leyland Motors Band, but it didn't sponsor the band. Only what it could do, because getting jobs at that time was pretty good. And Leyland was a very good truck making and bus making. At one time they were doing 98% of the bus market was from Leyland in the British Isles. So
that time's changed.
Wonderful. We're not go there. But and Harold Moss, and he said, "Would you like some lessons from Harold Moss?" And I said, "Oh, Dan, that would be great." So he got in touch with me. He said, "Oh, I'll give you a lesson, one a week, I think it was." And I remember Harold Moss lived in Sandy Lane, which is a lovely lane, in Leyland. And I got to his house for the first lesson, and he was playing his trombone. I could hear him playing his trombone. Well, he had not a nickname, but he was named as the King of Trombones.
He was a very good player, wasn't he?
Very good. And so I'm standing outside, and he was playing, and I thought, I can't knock while he's playing. So I listened, and he's still playing. And about 10 minutes later, he stopped, so I knocked on the door, and he told me off for being late.
Did you get a thick ear off him as well?
No.
Okay.
And I had lessons from him, and I said to him, I wouldn't mind, I'd like to join Leyland Motors Band. And his advice he gave me, he said, "Where are you playing now?" I said, "In the Leyland British Legion Band." "What's your position?" I said, "I'm principal corner." He said, "Can I give you a bit of luck?" And I stay there for at least another couple of years. And then, because all I could offer you now is maybe second or third corner in Leyland Motors Band. And you want to improve, you'd be better playing as principal corner. So,
which you did.
I did.
Okay. Now, all of this musical practice, I think at that time you probably realised music was going to be your career. Academically, it wasn't as strong.
No.
No? Everybody has their talents in life,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think you probably discovered yours during those formative years.
Well, I had a dear friend called Peter Booth. We were in the same form together. We were 1B, 2B, 3B, 4B going up. And one year he would be last and I would be second last. The next year I would be last. So we shared that honour all the way up. We got to 4B and then the next year we would be 45, I think. Yeah. No, it would be nearly 50. With 49. Well, I went back to the grammar school in September and we all used to sit on the floor in the hall and the headmaster would come out, read out the people. In the upper six will be, read the names out, the lower six will be, 5A will be, 5B will be, and I thought, that's funny, my name's not in there. 5C will be, and I'm sitting on my own in this place. And then he said 4A will be 4B, Richard Evans, and I thought, no, this is not right.
So they kept you down a year at school?
Well, because in the fifth form, there wasn't O levels of that, GCSE, but
Yes.
it was a school certificate.
Correct.
You know that.
Yes.
You had to pass 5 subjects and they gave you a school certificate.
Yes.
And they didn't think I was up to that, which I think they were right. So I went home, terrified of what my father would say. So I'm looking at my shoes when I tell him, I said, Dad, I've been kept down in 4B. Right, you're going to work, he said.
And that was it?
And I said, well, and he went straight to the school. And the headmaster said, no, you can't take your son away. He said, just watch me, yeah. And I finished at December. I didn't even go through that. I did the first term to December. And I started work on the 1st of January, 1950. A printer.
You was an apprentice printer?
I was.
Yeah?
Typesetter.
I think I also read that you'd had a discussion with your father at the time, that you wanted to perhaps be a professional musician, and your father dissuaded you on that and said you need a trade son.
Yes, but we were just out of sync there with dates. It was when I went for national service in '55. My father was always bitter about being, not kicked out, but medically unfit. So, because he loved the army, that's all he'd ever done. He loved the army and all his pals, and he'd such an army, like we used to go to his reunions and we'd lose him, we'd be all with his pals. And it was in 1955, I was called up to, well, I have a lovely letter from Dr. Dennis Wright, one from Harrow and one from Harry Mortimer. Lovely recommendation of my ability. And so I went to, I got my medical about 2 miles down the road here. And we had a local regiment called the Loyal North Lancashire, stationed in Preston, 4 barracks.
That's right.
I said to my dad, well, I don't mind as long as I don't go in the Loyals. You know, I don't want to be local. So of course, and I went into this, the sergeant said, now son, can I help you? I said, well, I've got these letters here. Wow, he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'd like to get into call bands, like the Signals or Remy, a call band. Oh, you're walking with that. And then 2 weeks later, the paper's getting Loyals.
Now, these letters from Dr. Dennis Wright and from Harry Mortimer, these came about because you were a founder member of the National Youth Band.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
Tell us about how that came about, because again, logistics in those days and travel and communication must have been quite a feat to put a new National Youth Band together.
Yes.
Particularly just after the war as well.
Yes. Because that was obviously Dr. Dennis Wright and Maud Thompson. That was his secretary. She became Maud Wright. You know. And this was in 1952, and it was my mother saw an advert in the paper. Anybody wanted could go, you see. So
and that's how it was advertised.
That's how it was, just in a paper.
Incredible.
Yeah, and so I went, a bit nervous because I was on my own and didn't know anybody. And when we got there, we had we suddenly realised one of the corner tutors was Willie Lang. The
Incredible.
great Willie Lang
Incredible.
from Black Tie.
Mm.
And so we all got there and we were auditioned. And Morris Smith, that's when I first met Morris. 52, Easter 52. He was number one. Fred Burns, who finished played in a band after, but he lived in Blackpool and played with Freckleton Band. Then the next number 3 on the front row was the great John Clough, but he wasn't playing euphonium.
This is before his euphonium days, of course. Yes.
And then I was number 4. So, and we were in our room one time, and Willie Lang came in and said, "Anybody got a Besson cornet?" And in fact, I'd just joined the Big Lane Motors band then. I was sitting number 3. And I said, "I've got one, Mr. Lang." And he said, "Right, boys, I'm going to show you how to play a super F." So, and we all went, "Oh." So he got his cornet, put the first valve down, and opened the water key. And went, beautiful it was. And can you imagine, all of us, all week we're going, we're trying to play a super.
How many months did it take you to get one?
I can't remember now. No. But that was, I always say that changed my life, my musical life. Going to the National Youth Brass Band of Great Britain, being in an inaugural course, that changed my life. I got on so well with Dr. Dennis Wright. I respected him and revered him. And he became quite a good mentor to me. Because I remember I just followed every word he said. And the next course was August, and it was down in Reading. And Morris didn't come. I don't know what it was, because by this time we were very good friends. I think he had something else on. So there needed to be a new principal cornet. I remember there was 3 of us in for it. One was a girl. There was me, Tony, I can't think of the second name. 3 of us in for it. And what they do at the youth band, on the Sunday night, that's your first rehearsal, all the people have had their audition. You bring the basses out first, and every trombone, and the last ones, of course, they put the cornets together, the solo cornets, and there's 3 seats, and they know who's going to sit there. So I didn't even know then what was happening, and so what we did, the lads were saying, "Dick, don't let a girl lead us. We don't want a girl leading us." That's terrible, isn't it? So
when you look back at it,
it's
in that period, it was probably quite accepted.
Well, this is 52.
Exactly.
Yeah, August of 52. And there was only about 6 girls in the band anyway. She was a good player. I think she was called Zelda, would you believe? Yeah. She was a very good player. So anyway, the whoever was announcing it might have been, no, it wouldn't have been Dr. Dennis, but somebody, Leonard Davis. And number 3 on the solo corner is Zelda. And we thought, I'm in for this. And then he said, number 2 is Tony. And so, wow. And then who came in to conduct? Harry Mortimer.
Fantastic.
And that was when I first met him, and he's been my mentor, was my mentor right until I was talking to him the day before he died. We talked every day, and I never ever did anything without his, say so.
Or his advice, or his counsel, yes.
He said, don't do that, and then he'd say, what was that you doing yesterday? I said, how do you know? He said, I know everything.
He does.
We fell out a few times, but...
which is perfectly natural. You're both strong characters. So from starting your first note on cornet to leading the National Youth Band, what was the time period?
Oh, well, that was 44 to 52.
So just 8 years, from never blowing a note to leading the
I worked hard
Well, like anything else in life, you get out what you put in most cases. So obviously you did.
I love the thing, I used to say it, but I saw Philip McCann, my dear friend Philip McCann, had something in one of the papers recently. There's only one place that success comes before work, dictionary.
Yes.
And I thought, I've said
great quotation.
Yeah?
Absolutely great quotation. Yeah. So here we have somebody who, without his father seeing a poster and without his mother seeing an advertisement in the paper, you might have been lost to the printing industry.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
incredible.
I liked it. And in fact, the one thing I have to say, because I'm ashamed of how poor I was at the grammar school.
Why ashamed?
Well, partly due to my laziness. I just felt I wasn't up to the standard of except my friend Peter. Yeah. I used to go, no, when I was at next level. Yeah, I just felt a bit ashamed, and it just felt it wasn't for me. So, and anyway, so I suddenly decided, when I became a typesetter and printer, that I had to go to night school, to Blackburn night school. And I enjoyed it. I studied there, and I won prizes. So I was doing better when I was working. So that, but
maybe a late developer.
But I still wanted to do music, and I started to do some teaching for Lancashire. And I used to play in the Lancashire. I used to actually tutor the Lancashire Youth Brass Band under Herbert Horrocks. Herbert was the music advisor. He did the choir, the orchestra, the wind band, and the brass band, and brought people in. We'd see Jeffrey Brand to come, and he would do it, and I'd be one of the tutors. So, and then there was something came up for a teacher in Lancashire County Council. So I went to Herbert Horrocks and said, Herbert, can you help me? He said, what do you mean? I said, could you give me a reference? No, he said, they won't accept you. You have to have either a diploma or a degree for Lancashire. I'm sorry. I said, well, you know I teach for you. He said, I'm sorry. You can't get a regular job unless you have something. He said, why don't you go to college? Now by this time, I was working on the newspapers in Manchester. It was nights, but the money was very, very good. And I got a son, and I was getting married, and I thought, I can't. He said, well, go to the Northern School of Music, see Miss Ida Carroll, she's the principal. So I said, okay, I'll go. And I went, and she said, oh, she was wonderful. She's like your mother. The only trouble is, you told us things you shouldn't have done, and she used to get you for it. And so I went to see her, and she said, yes, I'll give you a 2-year course for a diploma. You know, and so I said, well, have you got your trumpet with you? I said, yes. Well, Cecil Kidd's there. I'll get you in to audition you. And Cecil used to be the principal trumpet at the BBC Northern. Morris took his job.
Yes.
A lovely man, but he was very. He told all the trumpet players, "Can you get your jobs back?" You know, he didn't help you. So I played, which I thought I played quite well. And he said, "You sound like a cornet player playing the trumpet." I said, "Well, you got that right." But he said, "Yeah, I'll take you on." So, and I said to Ida Carroll, "Oh, don't worry about him. He's always bad-tempered." And then, I had to decide, and with my wife thinking, I said, "You're going to have to get another job or something." She became a postwoman, and because we got a son who my mother helped her, and from having just about 1960s, 65-ish, from getting maybe 50, 60 pounds a week, which was a big money, and working nights permanently, and to going to a £13 a week grant. So, and I never looked back. Just never looked back, because I loved every minute I was doing it.
Now, the Manchester College of Music, where you were at,
well,
it's a
Northern School of Music.
The Northern School of Music. That then combined with
the Royal Manchester College of
Manchester
Music, yeah.
to form what is now the Royal Northern College of
Yeah,
Music,
RNCM.
which is famous the world
Yes.
over. Now, at that time, jobs for musicians and opportunities for musicians were probably far greater than what they are now.
Yes.
Every pit orchestra needed people, every dance band, every dance hall on a Friday and Saturday. And I think that's where you found your niche in those days.
I did. I loved it. I loved being in theatre. I loved played band. Well, I went to the very first rehearsal of the Sid Lawrence band, and I played with him for quite a long time. Until I found that he would say something. He wasn't the nicest man in the world, but he's a great trumpet player.
Really? Okay.
And of course, we would play away, and he'd be in the front, and then for the back chorus, he'd join us. So we'd have 5 trumpets, And the back row, what a band. And I never, because I played in dance bands a lot before then, well, it was really, it was good, but it was, we never rehearsed anything. And it was all right, it went on. In Sid Lawrence, Fred Kelly was the lead trumpet then, and I would be playing third or fourth, and he'd say, right fellas, get the dots out, get the charts out, the music out. And he said, right, get your pencils out, long, short, we used to mark every note. People don't realise just the detail that went into that. That's why it sounded, and still does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds easy, but anything that sounds easy is difficult to play.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And of course, I'm learning all the time. This is a good way to do things. So when I'm conducting brass bands, that's what I think about.
So you're grounded in all of this, Richard. You've got the discipline of formal theory, you've got the discipline of college, you've got the freedom of jazz and dance band styles. Put all that together, and that encapsulates Richard Evans' style of music.
Yes, well, yeah, I don't know more than any, but I've been around longer, and I've tried everything.
Yes.
Played in circuses, in the pit orchestra. Well, I played with the BBC Northern quite a lot with Morris as extra. So, and they were wonderful days. Wonderful days. I played in a lot of symphony orchestras. I've played third trumpet with Sibelius Second Symphony. I've been crying while I've been playing with joy. Oh, I'm a lucky man.
Absolutely.
But then again, you see, when I was in the army, would you believe it, was Preston, forward barracks Preston, so I didn't go very far. So, join the army and see the world. I saw Preston, it was like 4 miles down the road. So.
Well, before we get too heavily into your life in the army, we're going to take a short break, but then when we come back, we're going to hear how Private Evans became Corporal Evans and what the effect on army life was. Join us again in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Life Stories with the one and only Richard Evans. Richard, I'm going to take you back to 1955 now. 10 years after the war, national service was still in force.
It was.
So you had to do 2 years. Where did you do it? How did you get into it?
Well, I had to do it, would you believe this? I've talked about the Loyals Regiment, and I finished up in the Loyals Regiment.
So 4 miles from home.
Yeah, that's it.
That's not very good.
No, well, yeah, see the world, but I didn't. But again, because both my granddads were 30-year men in the army.
Right.
My father did 26 years, and an uncle who did 20-odd years. So we were all soldiers, and I loved it. I got to forward barracks, and the corporals and sergeants make you look stupid, but you get over that. And the worst thing, they give you all the kit, all the clothing you need, and you're standing outside the quartermaster's store, and you've got all this stuff, and they give you a pair of boots. And these boots, normally, if you see boots in the army, they're polished beautifully. These had lumps on them. They were raw. You had to work on them, and they were tied together with string. Each boot. And you get outside, and then the sergeant said, "Right, what I want you to do now, take your right foot backwards, and when I say go, kick it forward." And this is to break the string on the, that's how they treated you like stupid people.
You couldn't have just cut the string.
Oh, no. So, and I got in there, and I realised, because I was a mummy's boy, my mum used to do my shoes and press my pants and everything, and the sergeant wouldn't do it for me. So
I loved it.
I loved it.
Why.
I really loved it, and it was then halfway through. We did a 10-year training. Halfway through that, in the 5th week, 10-year did I say 10-week training, and halfway through the 5th week, the intake before us were passing out. They'd done their 10 weeks, and the band came down of the Loyals from Barnard Castle. And I sought permission from the bandmaster to talk with him. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm not a band player. I'd like to join the band when I finish." He said, "Are you regular or national service?" I said, "I'm national service." And he turned away and walked away.
Really?
Not interested. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to change my mind about that. And then, so, who was best recruit? I got best recruit. I loved it. I just loved it.
So you took to army life. You
Yes.
took to the discipline of army life.
Yeah, I
Were
loved
you
it.
a model soldier?
Yes, I was. I wasn't very good at shooting, but well, I say I wasn't very good at shooting, but there was a few naughty things we used to do. On the shooting range, that we all had to shooting range. If we had a particularly good friend, and we'd be in the butts, we'd be down underneath where all the targets come, and we used to tell this friend of ours, "Don't fire at the targets. We'll look after you." And so he'd shoot. You had a clip on your 303 rifle that fired 5 bullets.
Mm.
And this guy, and then we were told, wind down, so you wound the targets down. And we didn't have proper bayonets. There was like big 6-inch nails, and we went right in the bullseye. So he got a bullseye and everyone. And I can see him now.
And these are the people protecting our great country.
I can see him now on the pass-out parade. And he's marching out. He's got a lovely crest there that said he was a sniper thing, you know, marksman.
Sniper standard.
Yeah.
Thankful.
Yeah.
Or thanks to
So I
yourself.
passed out then, and I thought, what am I going to do? Because they don't want me to put it there. And then the CO sent for me. He said, Evans, we're going to make you an NCO, non-commissioned officer.
Mm.
You get 1 stripe, and you won't get paid for it, but you get one, and you'll look after the new intake, 8 men from the new intake. Well, of course, I'd just done my 10 weeks, so I knew it was like, and some of them they'd no idea what was going on. I said, don't worry, fellas, but one thing you mustn't do, you mustn't sign on. Don't become a regular. And if you became a regular, on your epaulets here, you had a green tag, so everybody knew you were a regular now. And I had 8 men, and in the first day, 2 of them signed on, one for 22 years and one for 6
Wow.
years. I said, what are you doing? And by the end of that week, 6 out of the 8 had signed on. So, against my wishes, but when I got to the barrack room, and they were all there, I said, okay, I'm corporal, that's my bed right next to the fire. And I said, I'll take my boots, gaiters and belt off, and I'll leave them on my bed, so I want somebody to blanco them for me. I want my boots to be shone. Make sure the fire's good, because it's getting winter, and I'll bring the chips back, because I was courting my to-be wife then.
On your famous motorcycle.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes.
So, yeah. And,
So was this your first experience of man management?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
So
Yes.
this experience in
I'm still
army
only
life,
22, it was. Yeah.
and 22. So this experience in army life, you're exposed to managing and cajoling and influencing people from a very early age.
I suppose.
And I think that stayed with you through the
I think
rest
it
of
must
your
have done,
career.
because I felt for them, because I've got a lot of compassion, because I knew what some of the corps, there were some very not nice people, sergeants and corporals who were regulars. They seemed to like enjoy taking the mick out of people, and it was not nice.
Mm.
So, because I do remember once in training, we were learning to right form and left form. As it's a funny thing, but it's a drill formation, and you'll have seen it on the Horse Guards parade. Changing it, up. And the whole lot come round, and then this one goes that way. When you're marking time like that, you must have seen it, and then
Yes.
you're off again.
Yes.
Instead of being in 3s, you become all that way. And it was a very hot day, and we couldn't get it right. It was summertime. And they all stopped, because it was cookhouse time. And they said, right, be back here in half an hour. Well, we didn't know, but that's against the Queen's regulation.
Absolutely, it is. You need
You
digestion
need-
time.
Yes. So somebody could have choked and died. So we're back on there, sweating. And we got to this, going around the corner, we couldn't get it right. And this guy just hardly moving his feet, So the corporal said to him, get your feet up, with other words, And he actually said something very rude to him. what did you say? So he said, Sergeant! So the sergeant came up. He said, tell him what you said. I told it I did it, and Ekin did it as well. So I said, fall into men. So they're marching him off. We're all woo, excited. They're marching him off to the gate.
To the guardhouse, yes.
Right at the gate.
Yeah.
And halfway there, he gets this little pig sticker out, and he's going to stick it in the back row. And he actually, the man behind managed to get him down, and so he didn't hurt anything. They threw him in the cells by the gate there. Half an hour later, he was let out, you know, because they knew they shouldn't have been drilling us. Yeah, so we had some good fun that way. Yeah.
So what was the journey from there to Berlin?
Oh, that was it. We used to bet because we were down. I was in the Loyals then. And we were down to go to Malaysia, and the Suez Canal thing came up. That was scary as well. They actually, the regular men in the band were all right because they were all right, but they were stretcher bearers. But because I was national service, they gave me a rifle, and I asked them what it was, you know. So I might have been going, but we got away with that. And then it changed. It said, right, there were 200 men from the Loyals who should have gone to Malaya. I hadn't long enough to do. You had to have at least a year to do or more. And so they transferred us to the Southlands, and we were going to Berlin. And we were betting each other, both the bands. We'll wave you off from Barnard Castle, and it was them who waved us off. So we weren't very pleased. We got to Berlin. And that was wonderful. I love Berlin. And we were looking after Hess in Spandau jail. There were 5 Nazis in Spandau jail.
Of course, they were
still
all
alive,
there.
yeah,
Yes. Now Berlin at the time, that was presumably split into the 4 sectors.
Yes, it was.
Into the 4 sectors. And how did you go on about musical life in Berlin?
Well, the band was good. The Southlands band was good. We liked that, and we used to every Saturday we formed a jazz quintet. With my pal Vic Bagwell. I was not great at jazz, improvising, but we used to play the Jimmy Lally numbers that the block musicians and all that. Intro, 2 choruses, and back chorus. And there was Vic Bagwell who played alto sax and flute. I was trumpet. But a guy on the guitar. One guy on percussion, and I forget, there was 5 of us anyway, and snare, drums and vibraphone.
Vibraphones, yeah.
Yeah, it was good. And it did give us, we got a little bit of beer money, that's all, but we just loved it, so I enjoyed it. And I had lessons though, I wanted to better my trumpet playing. Herr Turglish was the principal trumpet of the Rias Symphony Orchestra in Berlin.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I loved the lessons from him. He very poor with English. Everything was begot. You begot that, and he said, when you come out of the army, you must go in an orchestra, which, in a way, I did, but later than he thought.
So a good teacher.
Wonderful teacher, great guy. Yeah. So
wonderful.
Enjoyed that. And I loved Berlin very much, and that's when I first saw my first opera. And we had to be in uniform because this is the last day of April, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Well, May Day was the next day, and the other side of the Brandenburg Gate, communists and the Russians. See, but we're allowed to move fairly freely if you were in uniform.
Sure.
Because there were the Americans, French, Russians, and us guarded Spandau, and there was an opera on. It was Prince Igor. I'd never seen an opera in my life. I went there.
And what a good one to go to.
Deutsche Staatsopera.
Fantastic.
We walked past it when we were in Berlin a couple of months ago, and I sat in, and I've never forgotten. If you know the overture, it's going very, very, and all these men are sitting on the stage, sitting around this big campfire, and I thought something wrong here. The orchestra's not all in, and they still weren't all in. None of the brass were in. And they go, pop-pom, pop-pom, and that. May God strike me if this is not true. I saw the tuba player about 5 seconds before he should enter, and he shut the door and he went, boom, boom.
Straight out of the
boom,
pub.
boom, boom, yeah, boom, boom, boom. And I think I was open mouth all for the three odd hours.
Well, it's glad to see that some things don't change with orchestral brass. To this day, they're in
wonderful.
brilliant.
And of course,
With apologies to anybody who's watching.
Yeah, we just
orchestral.
I've loved opera ever since, and luckily my Pam, we go nearly every year to Verona. We're going this year to see Nabucco and Carmen.
Oh, beautiful.
We go every year.
Wonderful.
Lovely.
So your time in Berlin must have flown by.
It did.
Yeah, probably too quickly
It did,
for you. So national service finishes. You come back to Lancashire then. Okay, back to civilian life. Now, for most people who've been involved in a team, whether it's military or with a big group of men together, there's a bonding process. There's a camaraderie, there's the crack between everybody.
Yeah.
To go from that, to go back to a, let's call it a mundane job,
6 people working there.
it must have been quite difficult.
Oh, it was awful. So the guys were fine, but I just missed the buzz of playing and being in the army and all that. And so I thought, I can't do it. My mother was heartbroken. She said, "You want to just come home?" I said, "Mum, I can't stay around here. I've got to be doing something else." So
She hadn't rented your room out, had she?
No, she hadn't. She was looking forward to it. And so I thought, somebody needs to help me. So who do I think? My very best friend, Maurice Murphy. I thought, I've got to get it. Because we didn't finish everything off. The courses were, and we became such close friends. He was my best friend. And so I rang him up. "Hello, buddy." He said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Never mind that. Is there any jobs? Are there any jobs over there?" He said, "Do you want a band?" I said, No, I want a job first." He said, "Well, I know third man down at Black Dye, he's going to South Africa, so there's a vacancy." I said, "Well, I need a job first." And within 2 weeks, he said, "Well, I'll find out." And he said, "There's two newspapers. There's the Bradford Telegraph and Argus and the Halifax Courier. Which one of them do you want?" I said, "I don't mind." And within 2 weeks, I got a letter from the Halifax Courier saying if I wanted an interview, ring them up. And Bradford Telegraph and Argus. And I thought, well, Bradford's better off because it's not, he lived in Shipley, you see, with Morris. So I went to see this man in the Bradford Telegraph and Argus. He said, "I believe you're going to play with the famous Black Dye Mills." But I said, "No, I haven't passed an audition yet." He said, "Well, when you do," he said, "if you want time off with the band, just go and see your overseer and he will allow you to have time off."
That's wonderful.
Wonderful. So with that under my arm, Morris said, "Well, you've got an audition tomorrow night." So I went there and I sat in, and I've never witnessed anything musically like that in my life.
And what a band they were in those days as well.
And it was all democratic,
Mm.
They ran the band themselves, which was a bit tough at times. I stopped putting my hand up, and they opened up with Scheherazade, the old humour arrangement,
Yes.
which is in 2 parts, isn't it?
First and third
That's
is one,
it.
and then second and fourth is in
So I'm sitting there,
Yes.
number 3, Morris, David Pratt, me, and Jack Brooke. And Jack Emmett went, and this sound that came, boom, boom, and I thought, what's that? and I thought, it's a bit tricky. And I thought, that's me. It's so easy to play when you've no passengers with you. We all just play together.
Yeah.
So I finished my audition. I think we played a trio. I can't even remember now. Played a trio. And then Jack Emmett said, "Right, all those who aren't in the band, off you go." That the listeners. And of course, that was me. I was standing outside, and of course they discuss it. Well, they will have discussed me, I know. And so next thing, the door opened. See it, and all fly out. And nobody said anything to me, so I crept back in, and there was about 6 or 7 people. And I went up to him and I said, "What's up?" I said, "Well, have I gone on?" "Oh, you're in, And that was it.
So nobody told you. They'd all walked out.
So we went home, and of course I knew Gladys and Bill, his mum and dad, so well, because we were very close. He said, "Good news, Mum, Dick's got in the band." Why, aye, did he? Because we were from North East. And Bill said, "Oh, aye, well done, lad." And she said, "Well, where's he going to live?" And Morris said, "Here." He'd never mentioned it to his mother. And she said, "He can't live here. There's only 2 up and 2 down. There's only 2 rooms." He said, "Well, we can sleep together." And for 2 years, we were both 22, for 2 years we slept together in a 3/4 bed. And yeah.
So you were the original Morgan and Wise.
We were really.
and nobody thought anything wrong about that.
No,
That's wonderful.
It was the proper days, those.
You spent 2 wonderful years at Black Dyke. What did it teach you?
Well, it taught me wonderful playing and playing together. In fact, Jeff Whitton used to get at me all the time, quite recently, before he went, bless him, and he'd say, "You know, they can't play like we played." I said, "Come on, Jeff. I've looked at some of these that Dyke are playing now. I couldn't even read it. I'm not talking about." I said, "He said I'm playing music." And you know, the more I've thought about it, he's right. He was right. There's something. I mean, they're wonderful. Don't get me wrong. But there's a lot in banding today that. Have you ever heard any of the old Foden's records in the 30s? No.
With
Well,
Alex taking them?
Yeah, no, that Alex is the co-op. Fred Moulton.
Fred, sorry, not Alex.
Yeah, and so they've just won an award. They've won for Heritage Lottery. They've won quite a lot of money. Yes. And they've got every one of the old records that they had, 78 and things like that, they've been digitalised or something.
They've all been remastered up.
That's something.
Yes.
And you can press a button and play them. I've heard some of the 78. They're unbelievable. Unbelievable. No band plays as well as that at the moment. All right. In the 30s, they went 8 years without changing a player. And that's the secret. You and I talked off camera some time ago, and we were on about bringing guest players in from on the continent and something like that. And you mentioned the band that we both admire very much, Ikangas Bosley. And they don't get paid, you know, they pay for themselves, don't they?
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah.
That's the culture. They sign up for a season and they pay to be part of the band. Yeah. It's quite a different culture.
Might be worth having a look at that, see if we can do that.
There's good lessons to be learned from all around the world.
Yeah.
But going back to your days at Black Dyke,
yeah.
You only had 2 years there.
Why was
that?
Why?
Yes.
Why was it? Well, I think the main reason, I was getting married. And we talked about it, my wife Sylvia and we said they would find us a place in Queensbury, Two Up and Two Down, which we would. But we felt Lancashire was more than Yorkshire for us, and that's why.
Okay.
That's why we did.
Do you regret that decision?
No, no, I don't, because I got what I wanted out of Dyke. It really was, and the one thing, in a nice way, I went to New Zealand, you know, I've been left a while, and Jack Emmett was the conductor while I was there, and I played under the great George Wilcox. Oh, what a man! And Charlie Emmett was Jack's brother, and Charlie died, and we were, you know, there was a lot of friends, and Jack went off to never got married, went to live in New Zealand, and he died. And I went over to New Zealand for doing something, I forgot what it was, and I got met by this lady, came to see me while I was there. She said, "I'm Jack Emmett's great niece or something. Would you do me a favour?" And I said, "Yeah." Well, Jack always wanted to be buried in Queensbury churchyard, and he'd been cremated. He was cremated. Would you take his ashes back?
How lovely.
Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. I was working with the Cargill band down at the bottom, coal place, and we were in Rotorua. And when stopping at a hotel, I used to put Jack Emmett's ashes there. And the lad would say, does he want a gin and tonic? You know, lovely. It was said with so much love.
Yes.
And when we brought, I stopped at Singapore on the way back, and I put, this man said, do you have something in that box? And I said, yeah, it's plastic though. No, it's metal. I didn't realise, he was right. So he said, what is it? And because I said, oh, it's a friend of mine, it's his ashes. Oh! And so, but you're not allowed to put it in, I had to keep it in hand luggage all the way.
Really?
And we went, I was only thinking about it not long ago. I got back and we went to the Queensbury Cemetery and by the church. Morris played, Roy Newsom conducted, Morris, Rod Franks, Jim Shepherd, and we're all the way around, and Jacko, and with John Clough, with all a fabulous lot. And that's when I realised what I'd learnt from Black Dye. Roy Newsom didn't have to say anything. Everybody phrased together. So you learn things like that's the thing I learnt at Black Dye, how to phrase, how to play together.
Wonderful.
Not many bands play like that.
So you moved back to Lancashire.
Yep.
You're freshly married. Everything is good. Okay. Where does the transition between Richard Evans the player and Richard Evans the conductor come in?
It was beginning to come in then, actually. Although I did quite a lot of orchestral work. I used to do Messiah on the D trumpet and that. When we got married, we had a place in Blackpool, a flat in Blackpool. That's wonderful, isn't it? And I thought, oh, there's plenty of work in Blackpool. So I went to see Mr. Turner, Norman Turner. He was the fixer. So
this is the musical fixer.
Yes.
Who would sign up everybody who played.
That's right.
Around Blackpool.
For all the shows. And
yes.
And he said, right, I want you to go to Charlie Barlow's band at the Tower.
Famous band.
Famous band, yeah. And so I went. And he said, and of course I had like a grey shirt on. He said, where's your white shirt? And I said, what? Because me being a bit naive, I thought, oh, it's an audition, I'm going to play for him, you know. And he said, no. And he said, I think we'll be all right with that. Put that red jacket on. Oh, go on third trumpet.
See, straight in the deep end.
Straight in, playing this third trumpet. And then the next thing, I knew Bill, the drummer, who was, hey, Dick, good to see you. We used to session, jam together when we were kids. And he was a pro drummer. And a hell of a good band. And so then, before I knew it, the first trumpet player went, you lead now. Yeah. I thought, oh, so, and I had a wonderful night with him, and I had to, obviously, trumpet, sight reading as well, but I knew quite a lot of that.
Sure.
And everything was good. And Charlie Barlow said, oh, you can, if I need a dep, you can come and play with us, so. And he said, I'll recommend you get some work. But then we found out that my wife was pregnant, so we decided, hang on, that's when I went to the newspapers.
Right.
Because I was working in a printers in Blackpool, and my boss was an ex-Linotype operator, and I gave him my notice. And he said, oh, you don't want to leave Blackpool, do you? All of a sudden, a lovely place. He said, and you're going to Manchester? Oh, I'd want at least another £5 a week. I said, I'm getting twice as much as I get here. He said, do you think I could get a job? Yeah, so that's when, and I planned it, so when my son was 2, and he was born in 60, so in 1962 I was working there, and I got 4 people came from Coppell Band, and they said, we want you to conduct the band. And I said, I don't know how to conduct, He said, well, we'd like you to come down. So I went down, and at the risk of being a bit rude, it was like the raggy ass militia. They really were. It was very cool band. 13 players were in there.
So Coppell was your first
that was it.
Real conducting job?
I spent 10 years with them virtually.
Wow.
And I learned, that's when I learned my trade.
And from Coppell, you then went to Wigan Choral Society.
Well, I kept that going as well.
Yes, yeah.
And that was the tie-up to Wingates.
How different was it conducting a choir to conducting a band?
well, don't forget, in this period, I've been to college at Royal Northern. And I thought, my professor, oral professor, she said, keep this up, Richard. And that's why I took Birkdale Orpheus Amateur Operatic Society. We did the World Amateur Premiere of My Fair Lady. They gave me an orchestra of nearly 20.
How wonderful.
But I did that because of my oral.
Yes.
And then I did, the same time, Wigan Sicilian course, and I did about 70 and strong. And of course the pianist was playing away, and I'd say, no, no, no. And I hadn't time to wait for him to, what chord do you want me to? And I said, D, all four, those that don't know, say D, four, and it was doing me good all the time. That's what I did it for. And then we got this. He said, we're singing with Wingate. And I said, oh, are we? Yeah. So, and I used to, like you on about the cravat, though, I got, because my wife was a seamstress, and I got this lovely shirt with a big flounce on it, you know, and a blue. I used to be a bit of a poser.
No, really?
And so I went on the stage and we did the Grand March from Aida. And although I said it went well, and they came up to me after and said, would you like to audition for the band? And that's how it started.
And that's the connection.
That was the connection.
How wonderful.
And I went, it was in May. I went to them in May and they said, you've got the job. Whit Friday was the first gig. And what had happened before this, I can't mention the name, but when I was doing the world premiere of My Fair Lady, I was also conducting Mosley Band, and they were going to the Open in September. And it clashed with this week, and I said, I'm sorry, I've got to do this show. I mean, it's world amateur premiere, and my wife's in the show anyway. And they said, oh, can you get somebody? And I said, well, we saw a ring round, and I got somebody. He's not with us anymore, so, but I won't tell his name. And he was so pleased. Oh, thank you, Dick, thank you. You know, so all right. Whit Friday, we set off in Leeds, played, and what was here, he rung me up the night before, this man, said, you're coming round with Wingates tomorrow, and we're playing high command, aren't we? And I thought, how does he know that? He said, when you get to Lidgate, I'll give you first prize.
No.
Honestly. So, it was a happy ending. So, we got to, there's Lees, Groton, Lidgate.
That's right.
Lees, and it's going. Groton. And we're up the road, we're going up that hill to Lidgate, and I thought, I'm going to have to tell somebody. I'm going to, because I couldn't live with it, you know. I'm going to have to tell Charlie Southern. Charlie was on the steps of the bus. And he got off, and I'm going to have to tell him. And he came back, he says, 5 waiting. Oh, let's carry on. So we never played there.
What a lucky escape.
That was a lucky escape.
Yeah. It's put you in a difficult position.
Well, impossible position.
Absolutely.
My first contest with everything.
Absolutely. So, you arrive at Wingate, and we've got 3 months before the British Open, the famous British Open, on fireworks. We're going to come back to this because it's a fascinating story.